Boy, oh boy, how about those Marlins, baby? Emergency podcast territory. They spank the Dodgers 11-3. They end the Dodgers winning streak at 11. They put up 11 runs, just 3 runs against 11-3 Marlins. Emergency podcast territory. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. This is your team every day, and thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day, or potentially your last listen for the West Coasters. Those ones trying to tune in and work out what the hell happened in this game. I've got it all covered for you here. There is a YouTube channel, of course, guys. Head on over there, hit subscribe. We are almost at the magic 1,000 subscriber number. We're like 10 shy. If you're listening and you haven't subscribed, head on over there, hit subscribe. Do it. Do it. It's important. At that point, 1,000 subscribers, I quit my job. That's it. The day job, I mean. Not Locked on Marlins. That becomes the full-time gig. Nevertheless, guys, thanks for joining me on a sunny Saturday morning. And listen, it is a sunny morning indeed. The Marlins spanked the Dodgers 11-3. This one got out of hand in many, many ways. So this is going to be a fun episode. But this episode is sponsored by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, guys, the rundown. If you are watching, you have the rundown to help you anyway. It just simply says, wow. Wow, baby. I mean, offensive explosion against Tony Gonsolin. Miguel Rojas ends up pitching the 9th. I'm not sure, based on all the history linked to Gonsolin, Sandy going as well, I'm not sure this one could have ended any better. Could there have been a better outcome than Sandy versus Gonsolin? Sandy getting the dub. Gonsolin fully blown up. To an, and there's reasons why. We're gonna cover exactly why that is. Like, traditionally, Gonsolin would have been saved way before this situation, but with changes in scheduling, Gonsolin, he was left out there. It wasn't that Gonsolin was like completely terrible, but boy, oh boy, the Marlins offense was very impressive, but equally, so was their plate discipline. One of the most disciplined performances I've seen from a Marlins offense in a long, long time. So poor old Tony Gonsolin, absolutely blown up. His final line, let's check the final line here for Gonsolin. For all the Dodgers fans tuning in, they'll be like, oh my days. 3 1/3, 8 hits, 10 runs, all of them earned, 4 walks, 2 Ks, and 5 home runs for Tony Gonsolin. Do you remember? And everyone's thinking, why is Pete kind of laboring the point on Gonsolin? You know why. You know why I'm laboring the point. Do you remember back in the day when someone was saying, hey, Tony Gonsolin, he could win the Cy over Sandy Alcantara? It was nonsense then, and it remains nonsense now. The funny thing is, too, the Dodgers fans, few of them replying to me on Twitter this morning, just saying this has emphasized the point that Tony Gonsolin shouldn't be starting for the Dodgers. He can't be trusted into the postseason. So that just shows you how wild that year was for Gonsolin. Equally, as we knew back then, like the Dodgers were really protecting him. He was effectively, he's a glorified long reliever, pretty much. And listen, yesterday he was absolutely destroyed. This lineup for the Marlins. So this wasn't an 11-run, game. If there was an 11-run game earlier in the year, it would have looked and felt so different to this one. This Marlins offense now is so different. Jazz is back. Bell's in there. Soler's leading off, which was very effective yesterday. And Jake Berger. This lineup is so different. And it can truly bang on any given day. It isn't the Braves, because the Braves is pretty much 1 to 9 can bang. I would say. Actually, hold on a minute. Maybe I'm doing a disservice. We had a Jacob Stallings 2-run home run to dead center. Oh, my days. Imagine if Jacob Stallings can kind of suddenly transform into like Sean Murphy or something. Boy, oh boy, then this Marlins offense is uber en fuego. However, though, this is a different type of offense than what we saw earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, you would have seen those, like how I described them, the paper cut innings where the hits just accumulate and the line keeps moving. That is not the situation here for this Marlins team. They aren't out there swinging out of their shoes looking for the home run at every single opportunity. No. Like I've already mentioned, this was one of the most disciplined, it felt like anyway, to the naked eye. The funny thing is, right, there's tons of stats out there now, but I don't know. I haven't got the time this morning to really dig into that. But like to the naked eye, to the casual viewer like myself, this felt like a really disciplined performance from the Marlins hitters. It really did. And they were getting kind of squeezed early by the umpire too. He was definitely like that low in the zone, low outside the zone to the righties. He was calling that. And you know, the Marlins, they didn't flinch. Brant Brown, of course, knows the Dodgers well. He also, and they were talking about this on the broadcast, preaching like, stay in the zone. Stay in the zone. That's what the Dodgers do so well. And this is what he's trying to layer into the Marlins as well. Stay in the zone. Don't swing outside the zone. There's nothing for you there. Nothing for you, pretty much. So, unbelievable performance. And it was jump-started by Jorge Soler. Second pitch of the game. Opposite field, laser from Soler. His 31st of the year. He then doubles down on that. Doubles down with a absolute mooner for his 32nd of the year. Boy, oh boy, Jorge Soler, what a game. I mean, imagine, let me just put this to you. Imagine, because the Marlins signed Avisail Garcia and Jorge Soler in the same offseason. Let's not forget that. Just imagine if those contracts were flipped on their head, where actually Soler signed Avi's deal and Avi signed Soler's deal. I don't think Avi would be opting out, by the way, if that was available. You know, if that was the contract structure. He wouldn't be opting out. I wouldn't say Jorge Soler likely, obviously, well, no, not likely. He will be opting out of that deal itself. But just imagine if they'd managed to get that, you know, the Avi deal done, 45 mil or whatever it was, you know, over multiple years. So this, you know, coulda, woulda, shouldas or whatever it is on that front. But Soler he's having one hell of a career year at this point. I say, you know, career year. He had an unbelievable one season in particular with the Royals, but you know, this is equally as impressive. And when he's hot, he's really hot. And since he's moved at the top of the order, it feels like he's got super hot as well. There was that little period where him and Arias both kind of went cold at the same time. They just kind of flipped it on its head, say, listen, what can we do? How can we make any changes here to get the offense jump started? How can we get Soler and Arias going again? Flip it around. Next thing is Soler's alive. Arias has come alive too. He's had multiple home runs recently as well. Arias specifically, though, you know, it hasn't been first half Arias. I get the sense that there has been a degree of like wear and tear on Arias. Like at times he's started to look a little bit tired, etc. But you know, I'm sure it'll come good. So Soler with the 2 bombs. You then get into a situation where Jake Burger then absolutely demolishes a 3-run blast. That was after Jazz and Bell. Bell with a great walk, Jazz with a single. This is it. There's no respite here. You've got to go through Soler, Arias, Bell, Jazz, and then you've got Burger in the 5 spot. It's so balanced. Then you've got De La Cruz and Sanchez below that, the guys that have been asked to do so much historically. Those guys hitting in 6 and 7 is a perfect spot for them. No pressure down there. And then you've got, of course, you know, the best power hitting catcher in the game in Jacob Stallings in the 8-hole. Boy, oh boy, this Marlins offense, baby. But that Burger bomb was stunning. Stunning blast, no doubter. Just absolutely demolished that one. Dead center. Amazing. I've been waxing lyrical about Jake Burger and his game since he's joined the Marlins. That home run was the type of stuff that I expected from Burger. That isn't a surprise. But the other parts of his game have been a really pleasant surprise. So that has been great to see. Let's talk about our good friends back over as well at, who is this at? It's Sleeper. So let's get the graphics pumped up for the Sleeper boys. Yes, sir. And if you want a chance to win more money with less picks, head to Sleeper. It's the #1 sports app where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. And listen, if you were picking Marlins hitters last night and you were looking for them to hit home runs, then you probably cashed in, no doubt. If you had Soler hitting a home run against Gonsolin, for certain you were. Jazz, Burger, Stallings. Did anyone have Stallings picked for a home run? Well, you can swing for the fences on Sleeper with up to 100-time payouts. All you have to do is choose 2 or more players that you like and select more or less on their stat categories like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win big time. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, and you get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me, Peter Pratt, on Saturday. It's the Saturday Emergency Podcast, guys. The Marlins offense, I've just described it simply as wow. 5 home runs in this game against the Dodgers. 5 home runs against Tony Gonsolin. Boy, oh boy, Miguel Rojas impacting the game with his arm. Ends up pitching the 9th inning. How's Miggy Rowe feeling? I know it's only 1 game, but Miggy Rowe must have been dying inside, particularly when Jazz blast that 3-run bomb to emphasize the point, take him up to double digits. Jazz is doing all sorts around the bases. I do wonder, poor old Miggy Rowe probably wanted just the ground to swallow him up at that point. But, he wants to pitch, Miggy. He's always wanted to pitch, but I'm not sure he ever wanted to pitch against the Marlins in his first game against the Marlins since this trade went down. So, wild scenes. There's some, let's just briefly talk about Sandy, then want to get into the scheduling changes that happened yesterday as well. Sandy gave up 3 home runs too. All 3 solo shots. Mookie Betts with a blast as well. I think Outman with a blast. And who else had a home run there for the Dodgers? I forget who the other one was. Muncy. Oh, yeah, Muncy destroyed that one too. So, listen, the ball was flying there in Dodger Stadium yesterday, no doubt. But for Sandy, a win on the road against the Dodgers, quality start. Huge progress there for Sandy. What I did see earlier in the year, we saw this where Sandy wasn't quite on. He would be going up to the 100-mile-an-hour gas early in games. Saw a touch of that yesterday, particularly in the second at-bat to Mookie Betts. He struck him out, but Sandy was digging for the big boy stuff early. Says to me maybe he wasn't quite as on as he'd been in maybe his last couple of starts. But clearly the run support helps. Obviously, a ton of Dodgers changes happened. Once that kind of the game got out of hand, all of a sudden you got 3-4 defensive replacements happening early in the game. Game's changed. So, 6 innings for Sandy. I wouldn't describe it as overly vintage. Particularly in that first inning, you're thinking, okay, the solo homer, then a couple of runners on base. You're thinking, oh man, here we go. Are the Dodgers going to kind of blast this one open? And the game looks completely different. Sandy got through it. The Marlins obviously gave him the offense gave him the run support he needed. But for me, I think it's just one of those situations where you take it and you move on. You take it and you move on. Quality start on the road against an 11 win streak team and club. Your voodoo ballpark as results of not being good there on the road in Dodger Stadium at all. So feels like a big dub for Sandy there. All right, guys. So then we get the news before the game that there's going to be a doubleheader now, split doubleheader on the Saturday, which is now today for those watching on Saturday, if it isn't still your Friday evening with a few tequilas or whatever it might be. But there's a hurricane coming in on Sunday. So they've ended up bringing forward Sunday game and plonking that in as a day game on Saturday. What that means for the Marlins is they have Eury Perez going in game 1. they have Braxton Garrett going in game 2. And with that is a really intriguing situation here for the Fish, because doubleheaders, as you know, you have to lean on your bullpen pretty heavily. You need to cover the innings. The problem here for the Fish is that they've got Eury Perez and Braxton Garrett, the 2 starters, going, neither of which you would expect any serious amount of length from. I think most likely you would see 4 innings from Eury Perez and you would see 5 innings from Braxton Garrett. So unless there's any extra innings, there's a decent chance that the Marlins bullpen across the 2 games has to cover 9 innings in total. It's going to be a day for the long men. They're going to have to use them wisely, for sure. I'm not certain on the status of Brian Hoeing, but, it's going to be a big test. I'm not sure this really helps the Marlins, to be honest with you. I think this probably hinders them a touch. The Dodgers have Luis Arias going. Julio Arias. Not Luis Arias. Julio Urias. He's going. And then it's to be determined for game 1 against Eury Perez. Again, the Dodgers, the only thing, though, is the fact that the Dodgers, they left Gonsolin in there. It kind of goes back to Gonsolin, where Gonsolin was left out there probably longer than they wanted to, but they know they've got the doubleheader on deck. They know they're getting blown up in this game. And you've got to kind of just leave the sacrificial lamb and Tony Gonsolin out there at that point, just getting blown up. The Dodgers had to do that. They had to. And then obviously Miguel Rojas covered 1 inning for them. So, they, even though they were fully blown up, they didn't have to get tons out of the pen. They covered, 4 2/3 other than Miguel Rojas's. So, the pen has already been asked. Alex Versea covered 1 inning yesterday and 2 innings from Gonzalez. So, there may be some roster moves happening for the Dodgers here. You get an extra man anyway, an extra guy for the doubleheader. So likely for the Marlins anyway, and probably the Dodgers, it will be probably a bulk reliever type dude that will be maybe added here to try to cover innings when if required. And I think they probably will be required. Again, this definitely doesn't really help the Fish in this matchup. Like, it would have been maybe a different situation and given an advantage if Sandy was going in one of the games, perhaps. And you can kind of maybe trust Sandy to get 6 or 7, really kind of stretch Sandy into it. But with Eury Perez and Braxton Garrett, my expectation is there's going to be at least 9 innings needed to be covered by the pen across these 2 games. That's a lot of innings. A lot of innings. Effectively, you've got 2 starters going and a full-blown bullpen game as well. So we're going to expect to see plenty of Hoeing, plenty of Soriano. We're going to expect to see everyone. Everyone is going to be out there. They got a day of rest. Even the guys that ended up pitching yesterday for the Marlins out of the pen, which was Okert, Lopez, and Robertson as well. So we're going to expect to see all of them guys pitching, plus some bulk from the other guys. It's a big test for the Fish. But right now, they had a 3-3 homestand against the Yankees and Astros, which is not a disaster by any stretch. The Yankees have absolutely tailspun since this as well. But the Astros are a good club. The Marlins definitely, I think left maybe a game on the table there after they'd won that first one. But 3-3, they're then on the road. If the Marlins could squeak one of the 2 in the doubleheader, which typically happens, like usually one or the other you take, would be huge. They'd end up taking a series here on the road against the Dodgers. And it's at a time where this wildcard race is really heating up, no doubt about it. The Giants, I always felt that they'd come back. I knew their schedule looked a bit tough. Not overly convinced about the Giants anyway. They're falling backwards at this point. They're 3-7. They've lost the last 2. They're only half a game up right now. The Marlins and Reds both won yesterday. Both are tied, dead tied for that 3rd wildcard spot. But you have to look at, the Cubs have kind of cooled off a touch. They lost to the Royals yesterday. They would have been disappointed losing to the Royals. The Phillies lost yesterday as well, losing to the Nats. So on any given day, anyone could beat them. You can look at these schedules all you want and go, well, the Cubs against the Royals, the Phillies against the Nats. It's baseball. Things can happen. They do happen. You can't take anything for granted. And the Marlins going on the road in LA, imagine if they take the series, then that wouldn't have been what people were expecting. Then you're on to the Padres. Padres are 4-6 in their last 10. They haven't been able to kind of get momentum rolling. They're still 5 games back. They'll feel in the hunt, though, the Padres. They'll still feel it. But I'm not convinced that the Padres now, it felt like they had an opportunity if they could piece it together. But reports of clubhouse issues and bits and pieces, like something's gone wrong in San Diego, it seems. But again, not taking anything for granted there. There's so many dangerous guys going. But, this wildcard hunt is bang live. The Giants are coming backwards. The Reds and Marlins came out of the break cold and have now started to heat it back up. The Cubs were scorching. They've cooled off. The Diamondbacks as well, they've kind of started to pick things back up as well. So it's all there for the taking. It's all there. But the thing is right now, I look at these clubs and I look at this Marlins offense and I look at the fact they go on the road against a team that's won 11 straight and they put up 10 against their starter. They absolutely obliterate their starter. 5 home runs in the game. This Marlins offense it looks like it can hang with anyone in a postseason series right now. Could the Marlins hang with the Brewers on the road in a wildcard series? Absolutely. Brewers just got swept by the Dodgers. Dodgers are sweeping everyone. But this offense, particularly if the plate discipline can stay. Imagine you've got the plate discipline and the home run power. It is a dangerous, dangerous team. Yeah, and again, we've all been waxing about it since. What a deadline from Kim. What a deadline. Berger and Bell, huge additions. Can't forget as well Jacob Stallings. I know I mentioned him once or twice, but boy, oh boy, a 2-run blast from Stallings. I mean, the reaction from the players, the dugout was amazing. There was a really nice little moment there with Yuli Gurriel, for certain, as Stallings was coming through the dugout, kind of giving him, the cold shoulder, and then they had a bit of fun. So vibes remain high. Jazz Chisholm Jr., top step of the dugout, main cheerleader. Like, if the Marlins can just keep it rolling here, there's a real big opportunity to make this postseason. It's going to wrap us up for Saturday's episode, guys. Thanks for joining me on a Saturday morning. Sorry to miss Friday evening's pod. However, this one is probably more timely. The Marlins put up 10 against Gonsolin. They win 11-3. They snap an 11-game winning streak from the Dodgers. Miguel Rojas ends up pitching in the 9th in his first game against the Marlins since he was traded. I'm not sure there's been a more perfect storyline with Gonsolin, Rojas, and the Marlins all weaved together in a single game. Nevertheless, Eury Perez and Braxton Garrett looking to combine to either win the series or sweep the series today. We'll look forward to seeing how it goes, and I'll see you soon.